Reminder, we will be starting with senior showmanship at 9 a.m. That's in 10 minutes. If you would like to participate in Peewee Showmanship or Adult Showmanship, please come up to the announcer's stand to sign up. We are waiting on the judge to arrive to start the show. First call for senior showmanship. This is Tate Tislin, Emma Brandenburg, and Michaela Lindsay. Welcome and good morning. We are going to start off with the national anthem sang by Amber Averwater.
Good morning, everybody. If you'd please rise for the national anthem. Oh, say, can't you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Entering the ring is senior showmanship. Okay. Our judge today is from Walton, Indiana. He is an ag teacher and FFA advisor at Delphi Community High School. He raises 60 head of Hampshire and Club Lamb type ewes. He was a member of the Purdue University livestock judging team and judges sheep and goat shows throughout the Midwest. Let's welcome him. Entering the ring is the first class of senior showmanship. This is Tate Tislin, Emma Brandenburg, and Michaela Lindsay. Would the intermediate showmanship please make their way up to the ring? And Zach Prescott. Second call for intermediate showman. This is Jenna Stahl, Reed Elington, Tegan Tislin, Rowdy Elington, Parker Fancook, AJ Cunningham, and Elizabeth Lindsay.
It gets ooh, we're a little loud. It gets a little close here on the top end. The young man with the south down and the young lady here in the bright colored shirt. When you combine those two in terms of what they do, I think you'd really get the elite showman, but they're both a little different. I think the young man's maybe a little too intense at times. The young lady's maybe too relaxed at times. But boy, in terms of her ring presence, as soon as she hits the gate, is very good. The one thing I'd say, though, is, young lady, you don't quite get a drive out of that sheep. And I realize that sheep wants to get sway backed at times, and it's maybe pulling away and this, that, or the other. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we got to be able to get a hard stick and drive to move up any higher. So you're going to be reserved, and young man, you win. And for those of you watching ringside and, wonder what we're looking for today, really just not just ring presence and good eye contact with the judge, but really keeping that neck back, keeping that top line level, and getting them set on all fours where they need to be. And so as the younger kids get ready to show, that might be something that we talk about is, hey, let's get a drive, let's keep the neck back, keep the top level, and get all fours where they need to be. But all four do a really nice job. I talked to 3 and 4 here about maybe some things that I would change or do different, but they were all very nice young kids and do a great job. Please congratulate all of them as they exit the ring.
Entering the ring is intermediate showmanship. This is Jenna Stahl, Reed Etling, Tegan Tislin, Rowdy Etling, Parker Fancook, AJ Cunningham, and Elizabeth Lindsay. First call, beginner showmanship. This is Shea Florence, Cruz Cunningham, Benjamin Florence, Tessa Fancook, Trevin Faulkner, Laney Wood, Emmett Boswell, Joshua Florence, and Silas Cunningham. Second call, beginner showmanship. Peewee showmanship needs to be getting ready in the barn.
really a nice class here as we get in the intermediate division. And, I just want to say, first off, the national anthem was great. So whoever that young lady was, she did an excellent job of that. I forgot that first class, but I did want to mention that. Last year, I believe when I was here, it was a guitar solo, and I thought that was really cool and was looking forward to that. And then we actually had somebody sing a live national anthem, and she just absolutely killed it in my mind. So I just want to compliment that because that was really cool and something that I don't always get to see. Now, with that being said, when we get out here and we evaluate these guys on showmanship, I think that all the way down the line, they know the basics of keeping that neck back and keeping the top level and keeping those sheep on all fours and knowing which side to be on. Now, that's one thing that I think maybe all the way down through the line, maybe at times we were a little hesitant on which side we should be on. And even with these two out here, I think it gets, at times, maybe I'd like to see them move a little bit faster for the young lady. I think it was the first time we came around. I'd like to see you switch sides earlier, and then the young man there at the end, as I came to handle him, I think you were kind of in the middle and weren't sure which way to go. And so I guess just be more sure of yourself. But both of you do a really good job. I think the difference for me is the way we go about it. And so the young lady does a nice job of when she sets that sheep, she can just push into it and it just kind of goes right into place. And that'll get you a long way with one that you've spent a lot of time with at home in the barn. But then when you grab somebody else's sheep, it may not be ready to do that. And I didn't switch them. I don't really need to see that. But what I would say is maybe more focused on placing the legs by hand. I know it's good to get them to set their back legs, but I would like to see more hand placement. The young man, on the other hand, does a nice job of doing that, setting those legs, and he's just methodical in the way he gets them set up. I think both of them get them set up in about the same amount of time. I just think the young man does it a little bit smoother. He's going to be your champion day. Young lady, you'll be reserved. And when we came out here in third, I told this young man he was great at just which way to get around the sheep. Where is he supposed to be at all times? I thought he was probably the one that did the most flawless job of that. But I told him, this sheep kind of wants to get up in its top at times. And so I would have liked to see him work harder at keeping that down. But in terms of knowing where he's supposed to be and hand placement and that sort of thing, he's really good. Next young man out, same sort of thing. Does a good job of knowing which side to be on, does a great job of getting a drive out of that sheep, does a great job of keeping that neck back, but at times our back legs are off here or there, and I'd like to see that a little bit different. In fact, your back right of the lamb is off a little bit right now. The next young man out does a good job of the same things. Fundamentals of keeping that neck back, keeping that sheep level. At times I think maybe we get this one too wide from behind. At times maybe the legs are a little bit off, and I'd like to change that. And then the next two out, we just kind of talked about hand placement, and we want to hold the sides of that sheep's head and kind of push back. If we don't necessarily want to pull, and we never want to connect our hands. And so we kind of worked through some of that, and they both learned and have been doing a better job of it since. So my hat's off to you guys for learning on the fly here. But they do a nice job of the fundamentals and really keeping that neck back. It was just little things of hand placement that I wanted to see changed, and then also knowing where those back legs are at all times. But go ahead and give them a round of applause on a nice class all the way through.
Entering the ring is beginner showmanship. This is Kaya Florence, Cruz Cunningham, Benjamin Florence, Tessa Fancook, Trevin Faulkner, Laney Wood, Emmett Boswell, Joshua Florence, and Silas Cunningham. With the first and second place of showmanship for senior and intermediate, please make their way to the ring. This is Tate Tislin, Emma Brandenburg, Tegan Tislin, and Jenna Stahl. Beginner show. Judge, we have two more coming. We need Peewee Showmanship to be making their way up to the ring. We would do Showmanship, Final Drive, and then Peewee Showmanship.
really a good division out here, and we're going to kind of hang on to these guys for a little bit longer, and it's still cool out, and we're going to work through some things. So you guys, please pay attention, and I'm going to kind of talk through some of what I was looking for at times, okay? When I go around to the front of the animal, right? For one, when I cross this rear end, okay, that's when we should go ahead and switch. And it doesn't have to be fast. You went a little fast there. I would slow down, okay? Another thing I talked about was we don't want those hands to connect. So your hands there, yep, okay? And then when I get up to the front of the lamb, a lot of you, okay, wanted to kind of leave a leg still up there and hold it kind of like this young man is. See how this leg's kind of still in front of the sheep, okay, and in front of its chest? I'd really like to not see that. I'd like to see the whole chest, and I'd like to see them holding the sheep, feet facing the front. Go back to the way you were for a second, okay? Yep. So I would like to see your feet together more, but then I'd like to see them pointing the same direction as the sheep. And maybe even giving a little bit more gap between you and the sheep. So that is the view that I'm looking for when I come to the front. And I think some of you need to work on that and practice that some at home. When I cross, nice and slow, and now I still can only see, I can sort of see the side, but really here I want to see the front still, okay? Now if you were to, feet facing the forward, okay? If you were to take this sheep and if you were to make an imaginary line at 45 degrees coming this way, when I cross that 45-degree line, that's when I start to see the side of the sheep, and that's where you can go ahead and start driving it again. So there's 45, start driving. Okay, so those are just things that I would work on for you guys. And I went through and talked with you about different things I would change. I thought that showing the front end was something we all kind of need to work on, and so that's why I went ahead and took the time with that. Let's talk about the two showmen here. The young man on the right, when we went to show that front end, he wasn't perfect with his feet placement, but he was the only one that knew that he needed to be off to the side of the sheep and wasn't left in front of the sheep. The other thing is, he does a good job of keeping that neck back and getting a drive out of the sheep. Are our back legs always perfect? No. But as soon as he came into the ring, he knew he needed to get the neck back and drive the sheep. Now, another thing I want to get nitpicky on with all of you is I see a lot of this, hand on the back or touching the back. It's okay to push the top down or to rake or you know, some of you pinch and twist. I don't really like that, but you can put the top down or you can rake, and those things can help your sheep to get a drive into you. But a lot of you were feeling at times, especially as I was getting close and about to feel, you were feeling to see if it was hard. When that sheep is pushing into you, you will know, okay? If you feel it pushing into you, its back's gonna be as hard as it can be. All right, and so when I come up to feel and handle a sheep, it's kind of like when we flex our arm, right? If my arm's down to the side, it's kind of soft, okay? When I flex my arm, even as I'm getting older, okay, and losing some of my muscle, when we flex our arm, that difference of the firmness, that's what we're looking for when we handle the rack. And so when the judge comes up, you need to make sure that that sheep's pushing hard into you, okay? I appreciate you guys allowing me to have the time to work with you on some of this, and you guys have all been very patient. The lambs have been calm. You're doing a great job. Back to this, the young man that wins, is it the best sheep out here? No, it's probably the lightest weight, worst one, and that's the great thing about showmanship, is if it doesn't matter how good our lamb is or how big it is, if we go out and do the best job, we can win, and young man, you win today. Congratulations. The next young man out, I'd like to change, and a lot of you had this problem. I'd like to get that neck back a little bit more, okay? And I'd like to not connect your hands. I can kind of see your hands connect there. Want to stay on the sides of the face. But your sheep was like a brick of concrete. So you've definitely put in the work at home, and that thing just stood there and did just about anything you wanted it to do. And so that's where you got into second, is your feet were always placed where they wanted. And yeah, I'm nitpicky about that front end and about getting that neck back, okay? And if you change that, I think you can get better and possibly surpass him next year or down the line. But just focus on that more. But you do a great job of keeping that top line level and keeping your feet on all fours. Nice job to you. Congrats on getting reserve here. And then the next one's out. I kind of talked about the little different things that they should all do, and we spent a lot of time working with them here in class. So I don't necessarily want to go through and talk on each one of them, but some of the things that we were seeing is hand placement. We want those hands kind of on the sides of the face, not necessarily behind the head. We don't want them locking behind the neck. We don't want them down on the neck. We want to show as much of that animal as we can and minimize the amount of our hands. In fact, we'll even, at home and with some of the kids I work with, we'll even go to a pistol, and this thumb kind of goes in the jaw, and this one kind of behind the ear or the side of the face, or sometimes we'll even have this grip. But when we're showing the full hand or when we're connecting hands, we're really hiding that animal. The other big thing is that when you guys are setting them up on the side, if my sheep is here, I don't want this back leg here. I want it back here. That way if the sheep jumps, I can catch it and I have some leverage to hold that sheep, okay? The other thing is when it's up here, it kind of takes away from the backdrop of the animal, okay? But you guys were all great. I appreciate you working with me and learning, because at the end of the day, it is a learning experience. And you guys, if you continue to learn and you can take what I said and you work at it and you listen to mom and dad and whoever helps you, aunt, uncle, mentor, whoever, you guys can beat those two next year, okay? So it's a learning process, and life is a learning process. When your parents were in 4-H, they probably had carbon copy enrollment. Now it's probably online, okay? So they had to learn how to not fill out the paper, but then how to work on the computer. And sometimes computers, I know for my parents, they're like, I can't figure this out, right? And so my point to you guys is this is all about learning. So keep learning and keep getting better and working at it so that you can be better each year, okay? But nice job. Let's give a round of applause to all these exhibitors on a job well done.
Entering the ring is the first and second place showman. For senior showmanship, first place, Tate Tislin. Second place, Emma Brandenburg. Intermediate showman, Tegan Tislin. First place, Jenna Stahl. Second place, beginner showmanship, Cruz Cunningham. First place, second place, Silas Cunningham. Peewee showmanship needs to be making their way outside of the ring at this time. Help me welcome our judge today. He is from Walton, Indiana. He is an ag teacher and FFA advisor at Delphi Community High School. He raises 60 head of Hampshire and Club Lamb type ewes. He was a member of the Purdue University livestock judging team and judges sheep and goat shows throughout the Midwest. Please help me welcome our judge, Taylor Plank. I would also like to welcome and congratulate our royalty for the morning. We have Michaela Lindsay, Lamb representative, and Megan Ellis, beef representative. Final call for Peewee Showmanship to be making their way up to the ring.
Well, we get out here and we mix up all the showmanships together and have a runoff, and I'm really pleased with the showmen on both sides of the ring. They all know where they need to be at all times. They all do a nice job of the fundamentals of showing sheep, of keeping the sheep between you and the judge, keeping that neck back. The hand placement is good. We're a little different in the hand placement all the way across, and that's okay. Some sheep we're going to put our hands more in the jaw, some maybe on the ear, but I thought that was all really good. And necks are back and tops are level. I guess the one thing for me, I think there's a pretty clear winner here in my mind, and then I think it gets really close for reserve. And for reserve, what it came down to for me, I think just a more drive out of that sheep, and even when we switch sheep, I'd like to see a little bit more drive from the person that I thought maybe was in contention for second there. And then I think third and fourth it gets close as well. And then you two young men, you're just young. Okay, you guys do a really nice job, but you're young, and it's just harder for you guys to have the skill set that these four older kids have. But if you continue to work at it, I don't know if you guys heard after you left the class, but I told everybody else in your class if they kept working on the things that I told them, that they could beat you next year. Okay, so you guys better keep working, because you got other kids your age coming, but also you want to work to beat these guys, right? And so keep working at it. I think you guys just need a little bit more time. From there, I thought you four was really close. You know, and I guess I'll just kind of tell you, if you guys stay still for a second, and we'll all just stay out here. The young man here on my right, he wins the contest pretty easy for me. Just cool, calm, and collected, and hand placement is good, and even when we switch sheep, he does a really good job of getting a drive out of that far sheep as well, and just does a nice, solid job all the way around. I think that was an easy decision for me. And then when we come to second, it was between the young man in the pink and the young lady in the bright shirt. The young man's going to go ahead and win and be reserve here. Young lady, I'd like to see just a little bit more drive and handle out of that sheep, and I realize it's a little bit weaker topped and it's hard to get a drive, but just somehow I'd like to see it was always soft when I came to handle, and when I put the young man on, I thought it handled a little bit firmer, and that was a big thing that I was looking to see. You do a nice job of everything else, though, okay? And then young lady on the back end, you'd probably be fourth here in this division. You do a nice job. I think at times your feet are off, and just I'd like to see you a little bit smoother and keep your sheep still at times. But all of you do a great job. My hat's off to you guys. Congrats to your champion and your reserve.
Congratulations, champion showman Tate Tislin and reserve champion Tegan Tislin. Adult showmanship needs to be making their way outside of the ring. Peewee showmanship, you are entering the ring. We have a few more coming, Judge. Announcement for all market lamb exhibitors. You have 45 minutes after the conclusion of the market final drive to sign your animals up for the sale at the sale trailer. Remember, you have 45 minutes at the conclusion of the sale, at the conclusion of the show. There will be no break between adult showmanship and the breeding you show. Excuse me. County born and raised first. So we will go directly into the county born and raised show at the conclusion of adult showmanship.
Okay, I told these young kiddos out here that we were going to walk around and I'm going to ask their name and their sheep's name. So if they didn't have a name, hopefully they thought of one by now for their sheep. I assume all the kids have names. So young lady, what's your name? What's your sheep's name?
Cora Shepherd, and my sheep's name is Karen.
Karen is the sheep's name. Okay, she's kind of acting like a Karen right now. Now, what's your name?
Hello, Don Karen.
Very good. And what's your sheep's name?
Sharky.
Sharky. Okay, what's your name?
Kinsey Lee Grace Star.
And what's your sheep's name?
Pickles.
Pickles. Okay. I don't like pickles, and my daughter tried to name a sheep Pickles, and I said, no, 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 no. Now, what's your name?
Libby Cunningham.
What's your sheep's name?
Maria.
Okay. And do you have a brother or sister that shows?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you notice, this young lady came out by herself, and it's okay that the others didn't, but usually we don't see that in Peewee Showmanship, so I told her if she was up for the challenge, I'd put her in the center of the ring, and each time I came by, I'd look to see if she was on the right side of the lamb with where I was at. She did a good job of that, and I'll tell you, I don't see that often at this age, and the sheep act's really good, but she's obviously worked at it at home, and my daughter's 7 and my son's 2, and I think my daughter, she's a pretty good showman, but she lets that sheep loose at times, and her hands are small, and the sheep keep getting bigger. But I just feel like my son, because he's going to see my daughter always out there working the sheep, he's going to get it at a lot earlier age. And so, young lady, you're a benefactor of that, right? You obviously have seen brother or sister do it at home, and you know what to do. And so those younger showmen, look out, because when this young lady gets in it, she knows what's going on, and she's already a step ahead of the curve. Now, what's your name?
Lindley.
And your sheep's name?
Peanut.
Peanut. Okay. What's your name?
Case.
What's your sheep's name?
Peanut.
2 peanuts? They come out of the same pod? What's your name?
Red.
What's your sheep's name?
Dorothy.
Dorothy. Okay. I thought maybe we'd name her the Gentle Giant after I said that earlier, right? Okay, Dorothy works. Please give a round of applause to all these youngsters. The future sure looks bright here in Clermont County, and I hope that all of them continue to do the project, and hopefully next year you add a couple more as well. But thanks again. These guys were great to work with. You guys, I'm going to shake your hand on your way out, okay? Good job.
Entering the ring is adult showmanship. This is Colby Brandenburg and Bailey Wakeham. Is the fair photographer in the Holman Arena? If so, can you please report to the picture backdrop? Class 1 of county born and raised market lambs needs to be making their way outside of the arena. This is Cruz Cunningham, Trevin Faulkner, Emma Brandenburg, and Lainey Wood. Getting ready in the barn needs to be the first class of breeding ewes. This is Emmett Boswell, AJ Cunningham, Cruz Cunningham, Silas Cunningham, Reed Etling, Rowdy Etling, Trevin Faulkner, Parker Fancook, and Zachary Prescott.
Well, we get out here for adult showmanship, and I was told that the champion gets to go on and compete in the overall big round robin showmanship type of deal, and I think that's really cool. A lot of places I go, we don't do that, and it gives a chance for people to continue to show, and maybe after their 4-H years are over. And sometimes we go into adult showmanship, and it's just a joke and for fun, and this serious out here. We're trying, we're working at it. And both of them do a really good job. The other day I judged adult showmanship, and somebody brought a blower in, and we joked that that was their sheep, and we joked that we wish the sheep walked better out of its hind end. It just kind of dragged its back legs, which was the hose. But back to here, they do a great job. They both listened earlier. You can tell that. They keep the necks back. They keep the backs level. They keep the feet on all fours. They do a nice job setting up the sheep and showing the sheep. They did a really nice job keeping their feet together and facing the same way as the sheep, which is one big thing that we talked about earlier. I think at the end of the day, I would have liked to see them both cover or fill the ring more, and even though there's just two of them, go all the way out into this corner when we're walking, just to really fill the corners of the ring. But with that being said, okay, I think that while they're both very comparable and similar, I think one sheep acted a little bit better today. And so one showman had to work harder at it, but I thought that the other showman, even though their sheep was perfect and just did everything right, was a little bit smoother in the transitions on going to walk and where to place the hands and that sort of thing. So the young lady on my right will be your champion. The young lady on the left will be reserve.
Congratulations, champion adult showman Bailey Wakeham. County born and raised class 1 is entering the ring, so you need to be outside of entering the ring. Entering the ring is Class 1 County Born and Raised Market Lambs. This is Cruz Cunningham, breeder Slack Farms, Trevin Faulkner, breeder Nathan Jarman, Emma Brandenburg, breeder Frankie Wilson, and Lainey Wood, breeder Nathan Jarman. Judge, this is your class. This is first call, Class 1 breeding ewes. Class 2 breeding ewes need to be getting ready in the barn. This is Silas Cunningham and Tate Tislin.
A nice class of county born and raised here. The young ladies that we're going to go ahead and start with. I don't get a great handle and feel on this one's rack, but it's certainly there. And I think the sheep just, for whatever reason, doesn't want to stick and drive. I think in terms of fat cover, we're ideal. We're starting to maybe push the envelope there. She's getting a little bit of cover on their outside rib there. But for a county born and raised project, one that's really good in terms of its lines and offers plenty of muscle and product, opened up in terms of its center rib and really good at the ground, which lays the foundation for the topside power. And that sheep just really comes together nice. If I was being critical, I'd just like it to handle firmer. We all know that. I've talked about it. I've beat that horse dead. But really a good-looking sheep from all angles. Plenty stout, plenty of good foot and bone. A nice sheep to go ahead and win, and one that y'all should be proud of coming out of this county. The next sheep out, I think this sheep's really nice in the way it's built, a really muscular, stout, structured type of sheep. I'd like to see it with more weight on it. I'd like to see it bigger. I think as we get it bigger and more weight, it starts to fill out in terms of its rack. We get more shape and spread up high. We fill in, and I think that hip loin, and I realize it's not a prospect show or anything like that, but just in terms of overall quality, I think this one's higher. So I can handle its hip loin being off, just a little slight deviation there, and I think with time and feed, this one's going to fill there through its hip loin. Plenty of foot and bone, shag. I think it's right for the times. Another nice sheep here to go ahead and go second. Sheep that comes out in third, a really good growing type of sheep, a production-oriented type of sheep. I think it gets a little bit off balance for me. It gets a little bit deeper in its chest than it is in relation to the side. It gets a little bit square and uncoordinated off those back two, a little too square out of that hawk. We're starting to get the shag. We're starting to get the bone work. I'd like to just pretty that one up from the side, make its front end better and give it a more balanced look. There's a tremendous loin laying in that sheep. I'd like to give it more rack, more topside power right behind the shoulder. But still a good growing sheep that has certainly got where we wanted it to, is going to cut out a really nice loin. I'd just like to change the balance in the back side and the front side of that rack right there behind the shoulders. But young lady does a nice job showing it and did a nice job feeding it to this point. My hat's off to you. And then to round out the class, a sheep that just needs more time and more feed. Has a good overall look and pattern. I think it is nicer balanced than the one in third. I think it's better of its angles. For me, though, just needs to have so much more power there on the top side of its skeleton. From the back side of the shoulder to where it hooks up there at its hooks, just really needs to have more freshness and more muscle and more firmness there. In terms of rump shape, I think we're plenty good there. I think we come level to our dock. I think we've got plenty of hip. The length of neck, the proportions are good. I'd like to see that top side be more muscular, and I think that's where I question this one as maybe being too light muscled on its top side. But with more feed, that might come. Nice class. Congratulations to all the exhibitors.
Congratulations, champion county born and raised, Emma Brandenburg, bred by Frankie Wilson, and reserve champion county born and raised, Trevin Faulkner, bred by Nathan Jarman. Entering the ring is Class 1 breeding ewes. This is Emmett Boswell, Emmett Boswell, AJ Cunningham, Cruz Cunningham, Silas Cunningham, Reed Etling, Rowdy Etling, Trevin Faulkner, Parker Fancook, and Zachary Prescott. Class 2 breeding ewes needs to be making their way outside of the ring. This is Silas Cunningham and Tate Tislin. Getting ready in the barn needs to be Class 1 market lambs. This is Benjamin Florence, Cruz Cunningham, and Tessa Fancook.
a deep class and a nice class, and I'm going to talk through all of them. So those of you at the end or ringside wanting to know what I think, by all means, be patient with me, and I'll get to breaking them down for you. The young man's here in front of me wins the class, and I think does so handily. For me, one that's really opened up in the center portion of its body, really stout structured, big-footed, plenty of thickness all the way through, and when we get behind this one, plenty wide enough between the pins, plenty wide enough down its top. I think this one's a little bit full, I'll be honest with you. I think we got her maybe a little too full when she gets around the ring. You can really see that she's just she's not bloated, but she's kind of full and gets up in her top. And my first thought was, well, can this one walk good enough? And she didn't want to walk for us at first, and then she got out and moved, and I thought she did a good job of getting out, getting on the move, but she does want to come up in her top some on the move. But when we get her on the standstill, she's really good in her lines, she's good in her angles, she's good in her basic build, she comes with extra bells and whistles. I think she's a nice place to start. Congrats to you, young man. The next one out here in second, really good in its lines, really unique in the way its top line comes together, just jet level. I think if I'm going to get extra critical of this one, it gets a little bit straighter off both ends in terms of the way it goes. And so even though we're jet level and really unique to that dock, and maybe it's a nickel dock long for my liking, but that's okay. I guess for me, at the end of the day, I think we get a little bit straighter off both ends on the move, and I'd like to see the foreflank to rear flank relationship be a little bit better. I'd like to see that belly drop more in comparison or in relation to the chest, but still a really unique type of sheep, and a lot of times your unique ones end up in second. Congrats to you, though, young man. The one that comes out here in third, for me, I'd like to fix this one right there in the center of its back. It's kind of got a top knot and consequently plays out in its loin a little bit, and it's still a little immature in its loin. Nice big rack, good in its lines, good in its overall basic build. The young man knows that, right there in the hip loin is kind of where I'm looking at and talking about that I'd like to change. And if we change that one, I think we definitely move that one up in second. And if we get a little bit more body and size on that one, possibly even surpass the one at first. So keep feeding that one. I think that is a nice ewe. And I think it's just going to come down to more time and feed to fill that loin, but also maybe a breeding decision if we decide to take her home. Maybe we can fix that loin in that area. And then the one that comes out here in fourth, boy, I like this sheep for its overall body and design, really opened up in the center portion of its body, just starting to get a little too much fat cover on her for me. Okay, she's starting to get that point where, probably too much fat. And I think that makes her look coarser around her shoulder and maybe not as athletic and as much of a sheep as I'd like. Short, moderate, compact, I do like that. But I think we need to put some more athleticism back into these sheep. And she's starting to push the envelope of being too short for the amount of body and mass that she has. But I think a lot of that's fat too. And so that's where we end up in the fourth hole. But a nice sheep that'll go on and make some nice weathers or use. We just need to trim the fat off that one. The next one out, a really neat looking blue sheep. I'd like to set this one's neck higher on the top side of its shoulder, but really one that comes together nice in its lines. And this sheep kind of has the opposite problem of the one there in fourth, of just too thin, okay? I think there's plenty of muscle in the sheep. I think there's enough rib shape in the center portion of that one's body. I'd like to see this one heavier weight and start to get a little more fat content on it. We're awfully raw, and she just reads to me as kind of a hard-doing blue sheep. And as we all know, blue sheep can be that way. So they probably tried to feed the crap out of this one and get this one big, and she just probably grew really slow. Okay, but even so, I'd like to change that front end assembly to get much higher, even if we did have extra fat. But a nice sheep, a cool one to look at, and I think one that'll be plenty productive down the road. And then we come to the young man's next, and same sort of thing. Okay, I'd like to see more weight on this one. This one really breaks there in its hip loin at times. I'd like to see it a lot smoother there in that hip loin connection. And then additionally, I'd like to maybe stouten this one up in terms of its bone work. We're getting there. It's not fine bone by any means, but I think if we could maybe get more lower leg, okay, into that sheep, and which I realize comes with weight and time, but more lower leg, fix the hip-loin junction there. Otherwise, this one's really good in its lines and good in its angles. I would just like to change it in those two places. But a nice sheep and a good project. Young man does a nice job showing it. The next one out, one that does come with a little bit bigger foot size and has that shag. And for me, and young man, you probably thought, man, so I'm better than some of those sheep over there. And at times your sheep is. But when we really start to study this one, right out of the backside of its shoulder, you can see it on the move, and I handled it and made sure that what I was seeing and what I was feeling were the same, and they were. That one just breaks right there behind the backside of its shoulder. I'd like to see it tie into its rack firmer and taller, and I really do think that it just breaks there. Can we fix that in the next generation? Maybe, maybe not. So that's just a big thing, the big question I had on that sheep. But otherwise, one that is good in its lines, has plenty of width, has plenty of center body, starting to be really trendy and cool looking and good built. I'd like to maybe clean up that chest floor a little bit, but in terms of our proportions and our balance, that one's sure getting there and looks pretty good. If we didn't break out of the backside of our shoulder, we're probably right there in that top 5 of this class. Cool little blue ewe comes next. Needs more weight, need her to come leveler to her hip, and I'd like to maybe see her more robust there in the center portion of her rib, but she's awfully young and awfully green. Love the pipes on this one, really big there at the ground. Just question if at the ground, even though we have those big legs and that stout bone and all that shag and all those bells and whistles, I question if we're too narrow at the ground to lay the foundation for a bigger rib cage, which is going to lay the foundation for more topside power. All these things will improve with time, but that was my big questions on that one. Next one to round out the class, one that's done a nice job growing, has some fat to it, has some muscle to it. For me, this one's too short from end to end, too short coupled, okay? I'd like to lengthen this one out, make it longer, and make it balance better. Starts to get a little bit short-fronted, starts to get a little bit too short, moderate, and boxy for me. And I'd like to see her, especially for a breeding ewe, be a little bit taller, longer, more extended. But you've done a nice job feeding this one and getting where it needs to be. Just for me, as a breeding ewe in today's world, I like to see them look more like sheep, okay, and be taller and longer, more extended. But you do a nice job showing that one. Now, the next two are taller, longer, more extended. They're also the lightest ones in the class. And so from an evaluation standpoint, we question, are they easy enough fleshing, or are they just young? I think they're just young. But with that being said, they start to get a little bit flatter for me in terms of their rib shape. And I'd like to see them just a little bit stouter in terms of their overall muscle. And I realize it's a ewe show that we're talking about, but still, I'd like to see some more lower leg to that sheep and just a little bit more muscle there from behind. But still, two sheep that I think if we put enough weight on them or get as much weight as our class winner on them, I think they're awfully more competitive and could possibly even work into the top 5. So from my standpoint, you got to kind of look at weight and size in your evaluation process too. But I think the overall parts and pieces to these two sheep are similar, but they're also, I think they're there. I think they're good in their angles. I think they're good in their lines. We just need more time on feed and more size to get us any higher. But nice set of sheep. You guys do a good job. Please congratulate all the exhibitors in that class.
Entering the ring, Class 2 breeding ewes. Tate Tislin and Silas Cunningham. First call, Class 1 market lambs. Benjamin Florence, Cruz Cunningham, and Tessa Fan Cook. Getting ready in the barn should be Class 2 market lambs, AJ Cunningham, Trevin Faulkner, and Silas Cunningham. Congratulations, Class 1 breeding ewes. First place, Rowdy Etling. Second place, Reed Etling. Third place, Cruz Cunningham. Fourth place, Laney Wood. Fifth place, AJ Cunningham.
we're going to go ahead and leave them as they came in. The young man's on the right will be your class winner. The young man on my left will be second. Let's just break them down a bit, though. I think the one that wins, while she's starting to get a little bit too much cover on her for me, and I realize South Downs are easy fleshing, and she's, I would assume, South Down, or she's at least South Down appearing. While I realize they're easier fleshing, she's starting to get a little bit too much bark on her, a little bit too fat in their composition there for me. But when we study her in terms of her basic build and her overall lines and her presentation, she's definitely level to her dock. She's good down her top line. And for all that fat, a lot of times when we start to see sheep get fat, they start to fall out of their front ends and not look as good there. And I think she still holds pretty good together in her chest and in her underline. A nice balanced sheep that's got plenty of width and dimension. I'd really like to suck the fat off of that one, but ultimately at the end of the day, she's better in terms of her angles, her basic build. She's just an all-around better sheep. Young man in second, that sheep starts to get a little bit tight there about its neck. I think I've seen this one out 2 or 3 times today from Showmanship and here, and so that one doesn't. I kind of, talked in Showmanship, I'd like to see the neck back more. Well, that sheep doesn't want to put its neck back that much. And part of that is it's a little bit deeper in the set to its neck, where it comes out of its shoulder is a little bit deeper. I'd like to see that more on the top side of its shoulder. And I'd like to free it up in its spine, and that's going to help it with its neck as well. In terms of our lines, this one's level down its top line and goes square to its dock, and I appreciate that. Got a nice hip, nice center rib, good in terms of its underline. Where I'm really critical of this sheep is it too short from end to end? So especially at over a year old right now in this class, we're talking one that's at its stage of maturity. And so for me, if that's the biggest this sheep's going to get, we're a little too short coupled from end to end, and we're a little too short fronted. I'd like to see him taller shouldered and run downhill the other way than what this one does. But a really nice sheep in its own right, one that I think with the right breeding decisions can go on and produce a better generation next year, and certainly could produce some leathers with all the power and mass that she has. I just like to change her there in terms of her shortness, both at the point of her shoulder and the shortness from end to end. But a nice project. Young man does a nice job showing it. Please congratulate all the exhibitors.
Congratulations, Class 2 breeding ewes. First place, Tate Tislin. Second place, Silas Cunningham. Entering the ring for champion breeding ewe is Rowdy Etling and Tate Tislin. And second place is Reed Etling and Silas Cunningham. Final call, first class of market lambs. Benjamin Florence, Cruz Cunningham, and Tessa Fancook. Getting ready in the barn should be second class market lambs. AJ Cunningham, Trevin Faulkner, and Silas Cunningham.
the second places in each of those classes were really good, but I think the competition for me between champion and reserve is up here on this end, on my side of the ring. And so I think it's very, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges, if you will, because we have different breeds, we have different sizes, and they do different things better, right? And so I think they both walk good enough. The young man south down, appearing you, I think she's maybe a little bit better out of her hawk and the angle to that hawk from hawk to ground than our ewe lamb. But the ewe lamb for me, I think is more ideal in terms of her fat composition, a little bit taller shouldered, and really good in our build. And so when we're comparing apples to oranges, and we're kind of looking at, you know, these two, I've always reverted to, at the end of the day, whether I'm at a judging contest or whether I'm out in the ring judging, at the end of the day, which one would I like to take home, or which one would I like to go show tomorrow or the next day or 2 months from now? Well, obviously the yearling is starting to be a little bit too big to show, and so at that point I changed my mind to revert back to which one would I like to take home. And I think that that's what separates the two on that side from this side, because I think you got two really high quality ones on this side, and so it just comes down to a little nitpicky personal preference for me, and I think it is close. I'd really like to see this one with the fat sucked off of it to get a more real feel of where that hind leg is, where the muscle is, and how wide we are between the pins. But a really nice balanced looking sheep. Like change the rear legs on that one. So there's a lot of things, and I guess the one that gives me the least amount of question marks from an overall build and standpoint and knowing exactly where I'm at and where the sheep's at, the young man on the right is going to be my champion. The young man on the left will be reserved.
Congratulations, Grand Champion Breeding You, Rowdy Etling, and Reserve Champion Tate Tislin. Hey, would Lainey Wood and Trevin Faulkner please report to the show ring without a lamb? Hold on. These two individuals really stepped up this year, and we would like to congratulate Lainey Wood for Grand Champion rate of gain, gaining an average daily gain of 0.75 pounds a day, and Trevin Faulkner was reserve, gaining 0.7 pounds a day. So let's give them a nice round of applause. Entering the ring is Class 1 Market Lambs, Benjamin Florence, Cruz Cunningham, and Tessa Fancook. Class 2 Market Lambs needs to be making their way up to the ring. This is AJ Cunningham, Trevin Faulkner, and Silas Cunningham. Getting ready in the barn should be Class 3 Market Lambs, Tessa Fancook, Joshua Florence, and Michaela Lindsay.
a nice class of lighter weight market lambs here. The young man's ewe lamb that wins the class. When we get our hands on this one and when we just look at the top side of this one, really big and expressive and shapely out of the back side of that shoulder. Big old rack with a groove going down the center of it, and then ties into a nice full loin, and she's really good in her lines. And I think that one, while she's a nice market lamb in her own right, I think she could have been good in the U drive as well, just because she's really good in her build and really good on the top side and opened up there in the center portion of its body. Starting to get a little bit deep there about the chest, but I think I'm okay with that in terms of the flank to flank relationship here. Good in its angles, heaviest muscled one in the class. Nice one to go ahead and win. The one that's in second here, I'd like to change this one in terms of its angles off both ends. For me, it gets a little bit tight and a little bit forward there in its shoulder, and gets a little bit restricted in its movements off both ends. I'd like to free it up in terms of its skeleton and its angles, and just realign both ends. Center portion of the body, top side of that animal, pretty good. Heavy muscle, groove running down its top, ties into a nice loin. I'd like to maybe shear this one a little bit sooner, closer to the show, get a little bit fresher, or take it a little bit tighter to the skin. That's me being extra critical and extra picky. But one that's got some power and some muscle, again, just like to rearrange it off both ends to make it stride out and a little bit better on the move. The one that rounds out the class, I'd like to see this one's top line come together better. I'd like to see it come leveler to its dock, fuller when it meets my hand there in the back side of the shoulder. In terms of growth and length and extension, I think this one offers some good things there. Starts to get a little bit too square about those hocks and wants to drive them underneath itself. Part of that's the steepness of the hip, but there's some good muscle in this one in terms of the overall hip muscle. There's a good design to this one in terms of our underline, but again, I'd like to make that hip and dock set leveler, and give more power on the back side of the rack. But a nice project, a good growing type of sheep for this young man. Please congratulate all the exhibitors.
Entering the ring at this time is Class 2 Market Lambs, AJ Cunningham, Trevin Faulkner, and Silas Cunningham. Congratulations, Class 1 Market Lambs. First place, Benjamin Florence. Second place, Tessa Fancook. And third place, Cruz Cunningham. Class 3 Market Lambs needs to be making their way outside of the arena at this time. This is Tessa Fancook, Joshua Florence, and Michaela Lindsay. Class 4 Market Lambs needs to be getting ready in the barn. This is Emmett Boswell, Elizabeth Lindsay, and Kaya Florence. Our judge for today is from Moulton, Indiana. He is an ag teacher and FFA advisor at Delphi Community High School. He raises 60 head of Hampshire and club lamb type ewes. He was a member of the Purdue University livestock judging team and judges sheep and goat shows throughout the Midwest. Please help me welcome our judge for today, Taylor Plank.
Certainly a trio of lambs that offer their differences and kind of challenge you from an evaluator standpoint because none of them are quite perfect. They're also not quite ready, in terms of being a market lamb that's fed to the weight it needs to be. And so because of that, we have some differences in their underlines. We have some differences in their top lines. And so at the end of the day, for me, I had to go with what I felt like was the best all-around sheep, the sum of the totals, if you will. One that's got plenty of muscle and shape, one that I think is more ideal in terms of its skeleton. And then if we can make them come with the extra bells and whistles, which all these do. I think all these have plenty of foot and bone, plenty of shag and look to them. But I think the one that puts it together for me, while we don't necessarily get the best drive out of the sheep, if we evaluate them on the move, which in a tough decision like I've got here of a trio that I think you could kind of go any which way on, for me, when we get this one out on the move, it's the best in terms of the way it gets out and goes. It fills its tracks. It takes a good stride off both ends. I think maybe in terms of setting this animal up, we could maybe crank its neck back and put its top down some. It maybe gets a little bit, if I'm being critical of this one, gets a little bit tight in its hip-loin junction comparative to the others. But where this one really wins for me is just at the ground, on the move, at the ground, and then also on the standstill, one that comes with more natural base width, which again is going to lay the foundation for that rib cage, which is going to lay the foundation for our top side power. And when we study these on their top side, even though there's a slight deviation in this one's hip loin, I think this one reads truer and more square and fuller in terms of its rack shape. This is the more ideal market lamb for me. Then the ones in second and third, I think it gets awfully close there. The one that's in second, while I wish we had this one at a heavier weight, this one handles so fresh and firm and square down its top. Actually, I was really surprised when I put my hands on this one, because from the side, that's where I really, and on the move, I start to question this one. Is there enough to this sheep? It's probably the most narrow constructed lamb in the class, but for me, is wide enough or wider in its pin set and offers enough lower leg, and just ultimately its top side shape and expression and squareness got it above the lamb in third. I think that one's handle is ultra good. My compliments to whoever fed that one or helped get that one ready. I'd like to change it in terms of its chest floor, but I think its neck and shoulder are more ideal than the one out here in third. A nice looking, cool looking, nice handle and blue sheep to go second. The one that comes out here in third gets a little bit deeper about that chest, deeper about that neck set, and starts to look off balance for me. Additionally, it gets a little bit uncoordinated on the back too, one step outside of itself. If it were just a muscle contest, this one's in second, maybe reaching up in there in the first. And that's, if you hang them upside down is what I mean. Not just obviously we're talking muscle out here, but if we were just going carcass, I think this is a very carcass-oriented type of sheep that has a lot of product, is high cut ability, starts to get off balanced on the side view, deeper in that chest, deeper in that shoulder, neck-shoulder junction, and just not quite ideal there in that front end for me, or on the way it goes on the back too. But one that offers some muscle and product. Young man does a nice job of getting that thing to show level top, but for me, I'd like to change that front end assembly. Nice sheep to go third though.
Entering the ring is Class 3 market lambs: Tessa Van Cook, Joshua Florence, and Michaela Lindsay. Class 4 market lambs needs to be making their way outside of the arena. This is Emmett Boswell, Elizabeth Lindsay, and Kaya Florence. Class 5 market lambs needs to be getting ready in the barn. This is Elizabeth Lindsay, Parker Fancook, Emma Brandenburg, AJ Cunningham, and Tegan Tislin.
You know, a nice class here where I think that the first and second really get close and comparable. You know, we'll just kind of break them down together. The blue sheep is really cool from the side, and when that one hits the ring, it really catches your eye, not just because of the color, but just the length of neck and the length of body, and those things are all really neat about that one. Starting to get a little bit longer pastern for me. I question this one in terms of, you know, its fleshability, its pliability, and you know, I'd like to see it a little bit squarer and firmer out of the backside of its rack and tying into its loin especially, but one that gets out and moves probably better than the one here in first and offers a really unique look from the side. The one that's in first, a heavier muscled, stouter structured type of sheep that gets a little bit uncoordinated on its back too, gets a little bit too square in terms of its hock at times, but in terms of overall market lamb, you know, I think this one's sturdier structured, squarer built, and the more practical type of market lamb for me in comparison to what I read is a hard doing, skinnier, narrower based blue sheep. But a nice, good practical type of market lamb with plenty of muscle. I can handle him walking a little bit off there in those back two and maybe not using the backside of his hock like I'd like him to, just because he does offer that extra sturdiness and muscle and product that I'm looking for. Nice one to go ahead and win. Again, the one in second, there's a blue sheep that I read narrow at the ground and longer pastern. Offers a really unique look in terms of its length and extension, but I'd like to see it fuller and square there in its hip loin, and maybe a little bit more robust in terms of that stifle shape from behind in comparison to our class winner. But for a blue sheep, you know, good looking. You know, if we were to have a class of naturals or break them down by breed, I think this one would be ultra competitive there. But for me, the one that wins the class is just so much more practical in its type and kind as a market lamb that's going to grow and finish at a good weight. But a nice, unique looking sheep to go second. The one that rounds out the class, the young lady knows it. The sheep wants to get up in its top, and it fights her because of that. And also, I think this one's a little bit too narrow constructed at the ground. I really like the shag and the look and presentation-wise from that standpoint. Whoever, you know, helped, whether it's you or a parent or a mentor or whoever helped you, did a nice job of getting those legs clipped down and looking nice. I'd like to see a little bit tighter shear job on the overall body, but ultimately the sheep gets off balanced and up in its top, and that becomes quite the issue when we have two in the class that don't. So a nice class. Please congratulate all the exhibitors.
Entering the class is Class 4 Market Lambs, Emmett Boswell, Elizabeth Lindsay, and Kaya Florence. Congratulations, Class 3, first place, Michaela Lindsay, second place, Joshua Florence, and third place, Tessa Fancook. Class 5 Market Lambs needs to be making their way outside of the arena at this time. This is Elizabeth Lindsay, Parker Fancook, Emma Brandenburg, AJ Cunningham, and Tegan Tislin. Class 6 Market Lambs needs to be getting ready in the barn. Michaela Lindsay, Tate Tislin, Reed Edling, and Jenna Stahl. Another reminder for Market Lamb exhibitors. You have from now up until 45 minutes after the conclusion of the final drive of the Market Lamb show to go to the sale trailer and sign your lambs up for the sale. You have to sign them up if you want them to be in the sale. They are not automatically signed up.
Really a nice trio of lambs as we start to get up here in the heavier weights. We're starting to see some things come together and some sheep that I really like. And the one to win the class is one of them. You know, at time I told the young lady there, get its neck back more because when we're on the move, And at times when she's moving around, the neck did get back where it needs to be, but at first I thought maybe she left that a little forward, and I realize it's not showmanship, but when I see one that I like, I want to see it propped up, presented the way I like, so I can get a true read on it. And that one, to me, when we handle that one out of the backside of its shoulder, really handles firm and upstanding out of that rack, ties into a nice big full square loin, and wraps a really nice leg, good in terms of its underline. I think we could get more drive and more uprightness out of that shoulder and that front end to really show off that animal. But that's a really nice one, a really good growing, easy fleshing, practical type of blue sheep that I really think could handle some competition as we come out later. I like that one a lot. It's a good place to go ahead and start. From there, I think that the sheep get a little bit shorter bodied and maybe not as nice balance from the side. When we look at them, they get a little bit deeper in their chest and a little bit more forward there in their chest plate, and then maybe don't wrap as nice of a rear leg as I'd like. But the one in second, I think, just offers more product and more muscle and more practicality, especially when we talk about from behind. We're bigger in terms of our stifle. We're wider from stifle to stifle and offer more lower leg. Additionally, I think this one ties a better loin in there, thicker and square than the one that comes in third. Nice lamb, just runs into a really good one there in first that's really nice balanced and right at 12 o'clock in my mind, but a nice one to go ahead and go second. The one that comes out in third is a little bit shorter necked, and I don't know if there's a white face influence in this breed or not. It doesn't look like a speckled, but to me, from a muscle standpoint, it kind of seems like maybe it has some white breed orientation in it. We get a little bit flatter and plainer about that hip, especially in that lower stifle and lower leg. I'd like to see that one a little bit bigger there and have more shape there. Additionally, this one's starting to get a little bit heavier condition, and we don't have quite as much muscle on this one comparative to fat compared to the ones ahead of it. But a nice project, one that's good in its lines. When it first walked in, I thought, here we go. But when you get your hands on it, it starts to be a little bit softer. As you watch it move and watch it around the ring, we're starting be a little bit too fat and a little too light muscled. But I do appreciate the shag on the legs and the all white face. It looks neat. Young man does a nice job showing this one. It was a good feeding project. I think this one maybe got a little bit too far past its prime from a fat to muscle comparison, but a nice sheep in its own right. Please congratulate all the exhibitors.
Entering the ring is Class 5 Market Lambs. Elizabeth Lindsay, Parker Fancook, Emma Brandenburg, AJ Cunningham, and Tegan Tislin. Congratulations, Class 4 Market Lamb. First place, Elizabeth Lindsay. Second place, Kaya Florence. Third place, Emmett Boswell. Class 6 Market Lambs needs to be making their way outside of the ring. This is Michaela Lindsay, Tate Tislin, Reed Etling, and Jenna Stahl. Class 7 Market Lambs needs to be getting ready in the barn. Tegan Tislin, Tate Tislin, and Zachary Prescott.
really probably the most competitive class that we've seen all day. This is how I like them, with 1 being on my right and 5 being down on my left. I think it gets really close between second and third. I think the one that comes out and wins, this sheep just handles really firm and expressive down the backside. When we get this one out on the move, it fills its tracks. It's really smooth on the move, really ideal in terms of its angles and its balance. Looks like a show sheep, has all those extra bells and whistles, but man, the freshness and shape and expression on this one's top side of its skeleton is the most ideal and most unique that maybe we've had in the show for me. And so I really appreciate the squareness and the way that rack just jumps out at you. Young man does a nice job presenting this one. This one's an easy one to go ahead and win with. From there, I think it gets really close between second and third. And while I do like the blue sheep in third, I think the one that most closely follows the class winner in terms of type and kind is the one in second. And somebody said one time, well, I'd rather be third than second because the third place is the one the judge didn't necessarily know what to do with. And I don't know that I would agree with that, because when you're third, you don't necessarily get to come out for the drive. And, in this scenario where we're given a top 5, I do wish that this one would get a chance to come out for the top 5 that's there in third, because it's in probably the toughest class that we've had all day with 2 really nice sheep ahead of it. So let's break them down. Where do I see the differences? I think in terms of fat and muscle, I think we're very comparable there. I think in terms of overall shape of muscle, I think that the young lady's lamb is bigger out of the backside of its shoulder as it ties into that rack, and I think it wraps a larger leg, especially in that lower third of the leg, and it's wider from stifle to stifle. And so that's where I side with that one. It also offers a more balanced look. It's leveler and more unique about its top line and underline, and it gets out and moves just as good as the class winner. The one that comes here in third, like I said, I like this sheep a lot, young man, okay? I think some of the same problems that it has. It gets up in its top. Because of that, maybe isn't quite as ideal or as big there right behind its shoulder blade as we tie into that rack. And wants to fight, consequently because of that top, the rear legs kind of get a little bit tight on the move as well. But man, an expressive, good handling type of sheep, one that offers some look. Just the sheep's uncomfortable at times in what we want it to do, and the young man knows that, and I think we can all kind of see that. If we could really get this one to loosen up in terms of its skeleton and fix that top knot and make that rack wider, this sheep's an animal. But it kind of just that top line and its hip loin, all those things are consequential that come together that make this one maybe not ideal comparative to the 2 ahead of it. But a nice looking, nice presented blue sheep. Thanks for working with it, young man. Then the 2 to round out the class, I think, again, a different class, guys, and these sheep are up towards the top, okay? But the weights that we want to be at, and I don't know what these things weigh, but just in terms of the size where they're starting to reach their maturity and get where they need to be, that's where we run into the toughest competition. I think these are class winners in a lighter weight, right? But also, they would need to be a lighter weight to do that. But in terms of their build and their skeleton, they're right from that standpoint. The young man's lamb here is ultra sturdy and big-footed and has plenty of bone. Comes together nice on the profile. Just handles a little bit softer for me. And I think even if we had this one sheared this morning with super surgical blades and down tight as can be, I still think it's going to handle a little soft. So don't think that I'm taking the shear job for the actual handle and evaluation of the muscle. But I'd like to see this one squarer and firmer all the way down its top side comparative to the ones ahead of it. And that blue sheep, that was kind of the trouble sheep for me. I think that, a different judge maybe works this one up in third because he's an awful lot like our class winner and our second place. But for me, that blue sheep handles so much firmer and fresher comparative to this one. It's a nice sheep, though. I'd like to see it get stretched out more, but I know that you've been working at that, and he kind of fights you and wants to tuck underneath a little bit. And so that's one of the other things that I maybe question. But a nice sheep in its own right. The one to round out the class, probably the most ideal in terms of our size and proportions. By that I mean the weight, the length of body, the length of neck, the height, Okay, some of these, maybe get a little bit too shorter, maybe not long enough or not extended enough. They are for me, but I'm a weather guy. I like them short and moderate. But I think if you get a lot of guys in here, they're going to say the proportionate or for the size or weight, I think this one's ideal. Now, what are the problems with this one though, right? You're like, well, if it's ideal, why am I last? Okay, right there on the back side of the shoulder, I'd like to see it a little bit squarer and firmer. And from the shoulder to the center portion of its body, it gets up in its top. And when we get that one out on the move, that problem really starts to persist. You do a good job of showing it out of it, or trying to show it out of that, and I can tell you've worked at that. But for me, when we get it out on the move, that top comes up, and we really see a deviation out of the backside of the shoulder to that as we come to the rack. I don't think it breaks there, but it's not firm and square and big like I'd like it there out of the backside of that shoulder. Additionally, one that gets a little uncoordinated on the back too and lighter muscled from behind. But still a nice sheep, good growing project for you. You do a nice job showing that one. Congratulations to all the exhibitors in that class.
Entering the ring is Class 6 Market Lambs, Michaela Lindsay, Tate Tislin, Reed Etling, and Jenna Stahl. Congratulations, Class 5 Market Lambs. First place, Tegan Tislin. Second place, Emma Brandenburg. Third place, AJ Cunningham. Fourth place, Parker Vancook. Fifth place, Elizabeth Lindsay. Class 7 Market Lambs needs to be making their way outside of the ring. Tegan Tislin, Tate Tislin, and Zachary Prescott. Class 8 Market Lambs needs to be getting ready in the barn. Rowdy Etling, Jenna Stahl, and Lainey Wood.
Really a competitive class here, and in terms of overall build and muscle and product that all the sheep in the class offer, I think this is probably our most uniform class of the day. And so that's what we should see as we start to get up in heavier weights. And I think that these four, would be a great judging contest, or it's just a really nice class to sort, because there's not a huge amount of questions about any of them, and they're all pretty good in their skeleton and basic build. And so it comes down to true muscle and feel and handle, and I think that's really where the sort is for me. the one that goes ahead and wins, catches your eye as soon as it hits the ring, really big on the backside of its shoulder, really fresh and expressive down its top, ties into a big loin and wraps a nice leg. I really like this one in terms of its overall balance and look. Comes with the extra bells and whistles. Good looking sheep, nice one. Pretty easy to go ahead and win with that one for me in this class. Then we come out here to the one in second and third, and I think it gets a little bit closer there. I think the one in third comes leveler to its dock. I think the one in second offers more shape and product from the rear view. Additionally, I think the one that comes here in second does so for me because it's harder handling, firmer handling, bigger top, more expressive, more ideal for me in a muscle standpoint on the back side of that one's skeleton, more ideal in terms of its rear flank set. But again, I'd like to maybe change this one's dock and level it out to there. But a nice sheep to go ahead and go second. My compliments on the firmness and freshness of that one's top side. We get out here to the one in third. A nice built sheep, and we can talk all day long on how good of a showman this young man is, and I think he can really, take a bad sheep and raise it a couple places, and I don't think this is a bad sheep, but ultimately here at the end of the day, even when you got a really good showman, this sheep needs to be fresher and firmer, and he even kind of handled maybe a little bit hot, so I don't know if the sheep was heated up or in the sun or what, but just the top side of that one wasn't very fresh or firm and was even kind of hot to the touch, if that makes sense, if you will. Not that we got to put a cold rag on them before we show them or anything like that, but it may have helped in this situation. That one I'd like to give it a shot more muscle and rear leg, and I'd like to make it firmer handling, but a really nice balanced sheep. The one that rounds out the class, not quite as balanced. Has some muscle, has some handling qualities, but really in terms of that rear too, it starts to break there in its hip-loin junction, and then wants to get too square out of its hock and really drives underneath itself on the move. But a sheep that has grown well, has plenty of length, and is good in its own right, I'd really like to change that back 1/3 of that sheep to get it any higher today. But a nice growing project. Young lady does a nice job with that one. Please congratulate all the exhibitors.
Entering the ring as Class 7 Market Lambs, Tegan Tislin, Tate Tislin, and Zachary Prescott. Congratulations, Class 6 Market Lambs. First place, Jenna Stahl. Second place, Reed Etling. Third place, Tate Tislin. Fourth place, Michaela Lindsay. Class 8 Market Lambs needs to be outside of the arena. Rowdy Etling, Jenna Stahl, and Lainey Wood. Getting ready in the barn needs to be first and second places. Class 1, Benjamin Florence and Tessa Fancook. Class 2, Trevin Faulkner and Silas Cunningham. Class 3, Michaela Lindsay and Joshua Florence. Class 4, Elizabeth Lindsay and Kaya Florence. Class 5, Tegan Tislin and Emma Brandenburg. Class 6, Jenna Stahl and Reed Etling.
Sometimes we get into some smaller classes, and I guess for me as an evaluator, it just comes together really, really quickly. I mean, I tell people at times, especially if I'm at a show looking at a sheep that maybe it's a lightweight and they want to take it, or they want to possibly sell it. There's some life left in that animal, or it may go on, and I tell them, like, when I'm looking at it in their pen, like, hey, I just want to look at it set up real quick. It won't take long. It takes me about 15 seconds to decide if I like a sheep or not. And then when we start to evaluate them against other sheep, then I take a little bit longer. But in a class like this, it just comes together really, really fast for me. There's a really high quality one to go ahead and win, and then I think there's two that are kind of comparable from that standpoint. And so we'll go ahead and talk them here, but I just hope that you guys see from my standpoint, I'm not trying to speed the show up or go super fast. I got nothing left to do the rest of the day, so other than drive the 3 hours home. But you know, the wife and kids are back to school shopping, so I'm not in a big hurry. And so with that being said, the young man's blue sheep, as we start to get up to this weight, you know, this one's just ultra fresh in terms of the amount of finish and the amount of fat. There's just not very much on that one. As we work up in the higher weights, we start to see more fat content. It's not the case here. This one's ultra big on the top side of its skeleton, a lot firmer handling. And I joked with the young man because his lamb just stood third in the last class for being a little bit softer handling. And I said, man, this one handles a lot firmer. And he goes, oh yeah. And so, and it does. It just really meets your hand with some firmness and shape and expression, ties back into a really good loin. Our belly fill is on point. Our look and bounce from the side are on point. Has all the extra bells and whistles. Gets out around the ring and moves really good. It's good in its skeletal angles. That sheep's really nice, and I've complimented and talked about some really nice class winners here throughout the day. And so if you're trying to read the judge like I do throughout a show of, well, which one did he like the best? Okay, I don't know which one I like the best yet. That's why we have a grand drive and a runoff. But that one's really good, and I can't wait to see that one back out here comparative to some of the other ones that I liked before, so I can really get my hands on them and compare them to each other and decide which one I like the best. But that's a nice one. Hats off to you in presentation, and you did your homework, because I'm a sucker for a good blue sheep, and that's a pretty dang good one. We come out here to the one that's in second, and I'd like to fix this one in terms of its chest floor. I'd like to raise it there. Also, it gets a little bit, you know, it comes really square to its dock, but I think that we're also starting to get a little fat content there, a little bit too heavy in our condition. This one doesn't handle quite as firm as the one in front of it. It handles square. It's nice. It got a nice big top side. It's square down that top. But for me, it's starting to get a little too heavy in that condition. Like to see it with more shape in the upper side of its hip. There at the base of its tail head, we really start to get peaked there, and the fat has helped to fill that void and help to change that sheep some, but ultimately at the end of the day I can read through that, and it's starting to be a little bit weaker and softer pastern, and I'd like to change it there. Good growing sheep that offers some muscle and product down its top side, starting to get a little too fat for me. Like to change its underline in terms of its flank to flank relationship, and ultimately it runs into a really good blue sheep to go ahead and win the class. But that's a nice growing, good type of feeding project for you, young man. The one that comes out here in third, again, kind of a down pastern sheep, and so being that second and third were both that way, it doesn't put too much weight in there. But this one wants to get up in its top and deeper about its chest, and probably isn't as good there in its hip loin in terms of squareness and fullness, and just kind of the off-balance sheep of the class comparative to the two ahead of it. Has some shag, really starting to take the shape of a good show lamb, but just has those differences there in terms of that hip loin and that top being up that kind of make it look off balanced. I think we're maybe a nickel lower in the next set as well. Just a real good growthy, practical feeding type of sheep that I'd like to change its top line and level it out there, get its neck back more. But at the end of the day, I think we're starting to get a little bit too over-conditioned on this one. But there's still some freshness and firmness there. I just think the higher quality sheep was the one there in second. But still a nice sheep in its own right, a good growing type of sheep. Young man, you've done a nice job growing this one and getting it to where it needs to be. You do a good job showing it. Please compliment and congrats to all the kids in that class.
Entering the ring is Class 8, Rowdy Etling, Jenna Stahl, and Lainey Wood. Congratulations, Class 7 Market Lambs. First place, Tate Tislin. Second place, Tegan Tislin. Third place, Zachary Prescott. All first and second place winners need to be outside of the ring. Class 1, Benjamin Florence and Tessa Fancook. Class 2, Trevin Faulkner and Silas Cunningham. Class 3, Michaela Lindsay and Joshua Florence. Class 4, Elizabeth Lindsay and Kaya Florence. Class 5, Tegan Tislin and Emma Brandenburg. Class 6, Jenna Stahl and Reed Edling. Class 7, Tate Tislin and Tegan Tislin. Third places also need to be on standby.
We're just going to go ahead and leave them as they stand, as they walked in. And the young man's lamb wins this class just from the overall cutability and the amount of product that this one offers. When we get our hands on the top side of this one, it's extra square all the way down, ties into a nice loin, and wraps a good leg. I think that, you could argue that there might be more hip and hind leg in the sheep in second, but I think the sum of the total sheep that maybe balances up better for me, comes square to its dock, is square down the whole top side for me, is the young man's lamb here in first, and that's a nice one to go ahead and win. The young lady's sheep here in second has a monster rack lane in that one, but I'd really like to change it in terms of that dock set. Maybe we're an extra vertebrae or too long there in terms of where it was docked, and it really changes the way it looks, but ultimately it makes it look kind of steep-hipped, and it's hard for me to say where that sheep's docked. I tried to feel it to get an evaluation. Either way, I really like that one's rack. Its loin and its overall balance and look from the side just doesn't come together for me quite as well as the class winner as we get up here in these heavier weights. And the one to round out the class, I kind of struggle with this one on the move. It wants to hit the surface hard. It's also probably the narrowest constructed at the ground. One that's got some shape and some product to it, but I just question it there at the ground. I question it in terms of its chest floor and its neck and front 1/3 and the way that that's built and designed. I'd like to see it level or down its top line. But man, talk about a long-bodied, good growing type of sheep, a practical type of market lamb, a good project for the young lady. Please congratulate all the exhibitors in that class.
Entering the ring at this time is first place for Class 1, Benjamin Florence. Class 2, Trevin Flagener. Class 3, Michaela Lindsay. Class 4, Elizabeth Lindsay. Class 5, Tegan Tislin. Class 6, Jenna Stahl. Class 7, Tate Tislin. And Class 8, Rowdy Etling. Now we're in second place for Class 1, Tessa Fancook. Class 2, Silas Cunningham. Class 3, Joshua Florence. Class 4, Kaya Florence. Class 5, Emma Brandenburg. Class 6, Reed Etling. Class 7, Tegan Tislin. And Class 8, Jenna Stahl. Outside the arena, we need all third place market lambs. All third place animals need to be outside the show arena at this time.
You know, I realize we got to pick a top 5, and I kind of have a good idea in my mind of what I want to do for 1, 2, or 3, or what sheep are competitive there. But before we get to that point, and I hope I'm not too windy on this, because, you know, it's almost, I go to so many shows that it's almost become a cheesy or a cliche when the judge gets on the mic in the grand drive, but that's also our turn to talk. And so I guess, our turn to put in our 2 cents, right? And so I guess where I'm at right now in my life, and, you know, as an ag teacher, as a football coach, as somebody that helps with multiple county fairs, and then I get to, you know, travel the country and judge shows, I think my big take home at the end of the day is be thankful, okay? Whether you are first in class or whether you are last in class, be thankful that you have a project at the fair. Be thankful that you have a kid that wants to show the project. Be thankful that you have a parent or a mentor or a supporter that has a barn and will help you feed your animal, right? Be thankful that you have those facilities or that you have a location where you have a barn, because I can tell you guys, it doesn't matter where you go in this country, we're losing kids that want to be active in sports, but even more so 4-H shows. And FFA events. I mean, we probably have, right now I can tell you we've got close to 28 guys on our high school football team, and we're a school of about 450, 500 students, right? So 28 guys isn't very many. You know, that's a small percentage of the student body, but at the same time, we only got about 18 coming to practice. And so we're trying to tune things up, get ready for the season, and we just have kids that they're kind of checked out. They're not involved. They're not coming out and working in that hot heat all day. In terms of my FFA, we got like 80 kids this summer. It's the most we've ever had doing summer SAE. And as part of that, they got to record 75 hours of work experience. And I'm sure they'll get those work hours, but then they got to come to 3 FFA activities. Well, I got about 20 kids that haven't came to a single one yet. We're losing student or the involvement from young people. In the counties that I help in, Carroll County, Indiana is where Delphi High School is. That's the #1 pork producing county in Indiana. We had 250 hogs last year, and we're down to 193 this year. In Cass County, where I live, even though we're a smaller pork producing county, we have a bigger show. We normally have 400 hogs. We had 250 this year. My point being, it doesn't matter if it's sports or FFA or 4-H, our youth involvement is decreasing. And so as a parent, I know how tough it is. I mean, we're in eight-year-old softball this past spring, and I know what it's like going to practices and making those sacrifices of sitting down during a cold, rainy practice, or spending your Saturday at a ball diamond in the morning rather than at the lake or golfing or other places, right? And so I see that, and I know it takes like 20 times more of that to be in high school sports, and it takes even 50 or 100 times more than that to get these projects and these young people out in the barn and looking the way they do. Okay, and so I guess my point is, at the end of the day, we're losing that for a wide variety of reasons. The cost of feed, the amount of parent involvement, the want to, the drive, the desire of both the kids and the parents. So just be thankful. Be thankful that you have a kid that wants to show. Be thankful you have a parent or a mentor that wants to help you. Be thankful you can afford the feed or afford the animal. And if somebody's giving you an animal, be sure glad and thankful for them. And if you can't afford an animal next year, I'm sure there's somebody out here that would give you an animal to show. I promise you that, because the youth out here and the youth at these livestock shows are our future. It's not the city kids that are coming out for the carnival and, stirring up the animals. It's not the kids that are sitting at home in the air condition all day and wait until it cools down to come out to the rides. It's the kids that know how to take care of an animal in a project. It's the kids that are going out and putting sweat equity into it and going out to the barn every day. It's the kids that are paying attention to those little business or those little details. Okay, because those little details at the end of the day are going to what makes these kids business owners and entrepreneurs and the type of employees that you would want to hire. At the end of the day, I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for the opportunity to judge the show. And I thank God mostly to put me in this situation, but all of us in this situation. And I hope that we continue to have 4-H shows and continue. I hope that all of you continue to show and encourage those youngsters to do so. That being said, I'll put down the mic. There's one out here that I liked a whole lot from the time seeing the sheep in Showmanship. I thought, wow, that's a good one. I don't know if I'd show one that good in Showmanship. To the time that we come out here, I'll go show you my champion, and then we get a lot closer for reserve and third, and then fourth and fifth are some that I like enough too. But there's one that sticks in my head and I like an awful lot. I'm going to put down the mic and show you that one. I think it gets really close here for reserve, and these three that are right here in front of me, and even the fourth, I think when those four started to surface and hit the ring, those four classes, bam, 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 were just really good, and take nothing away from the lightweights or the heavyweight down there, but I guess these four classes were what hit me the hardest, and that's where our sheep got ultra competitive. While I like your blue sheep young man, I think it gets a little bit deeper there in its chest floor. The reserve comes out of that same class. I talked in class about liking that third place animal, and it ran into two really good ones. And so the ring help actually told me, hey, we can have those thirds on deck, and we can pull however many deep in the class if you want. And so I appreciate that. Not a lot of shows get to do that, and so here's one that was in third that's pretty nice. It's not the third overall in the show for me, but it's still a nice one. I'm glad we were able to bring it out here because I think it is deserving to be out here. With that being said, the young man's blue sheep will be your third overall. Then I think it gets really closer here for fourth and fifth. Again, kind of three sheep right here, and it's not just that I'm a sucker for blue sheep. I think, we brought some really good blue sheep out here. And so with that being said, I like those two. I think it is really close. I think those two are really comparable, but I think there's one out here that handles with more muscle and freshness and is more comparable to the ones that are already ahead that we've selected. This is going to be your fourth overall. I think it gets really close, guys. Really, I think you could go either way, and I know it's going to make somebody's day to be in the top 5, and somebody's just going to say, oh, well, we were close. We were close, because both of you, I think it is splitting hairs here. I think the sheep are both similar in their build in terms of, they both could be a little bit leveler and square out of the backside of their rack coming to their top, but they're both really good handling. I think the sheep that offers more muscle and product and that comes in a more unique package for me is the young man, so that'll be 5th overall.
Congratulations. Grand champion overall, Tegan Tislin. Reserve champion, Emma Brandenburg. 3rd overall, Tate Tislin. 4th overall, Jenna Stahl. And 5th overall, AJ Cunningham. Again, congratulations to those folks.